Elena Harper stood in the pouring Seattle rain, her tailored coat soaked through, as the security guard's words echoed in her mind. "Wait outside, Miss Harper. The board's not ready for you." 38 years old, CEO of Verdant Innovations, and she was being treated like an unwelcome guest at her own company. She clenched her fists, the cold biting into her knuckles, but her heart burned with a fire that no storm could douse. The glass doors of the towering office building loomed before her, reflecting her silhouette against the city's neon glow. Inside, the boardroom was warm, dry, and filled with men who thought they could strip her of everything she'd built. Verdant wasn't just a tech empire. It was her legacy, her defiance against a world that had told her, time and again, she didn't belong. Elena had clawed her way up from nothing, a queer woman in a man's world, and now they wanted to push her out because of who she was, who she loved, and the truth she refused to hide. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a single text from Sophia Nguyen. "You've got this. Don't let them win." Sophia, the brilliant, fiery programmer who'd stolen Elena's heart 6 months ago, was the only one who saw through her polished exterior to the woman beneath, scared, fierce, and fiercely in love. At 32, Sophia had a quiet strength, her warm brown eyes holding a courage that made Elena want to be better, braver. Their relationship was a secret to the world, but to Elena, it was the anchor keeping her from drowning. She straightened, wiping rain from her face, and pushed through the doors. The security guard flinched as she strode past, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The boardroom was a fortress of glass and steel, and as she entered, 10 pairs of eyes turned to her, cold and calculating. Richard Vance, the board's chairman, leaned back in his chair, his smirk as sharp as a blade. "Miss Harper, we asked you to wait." "And I'm done waiting," Elena said, her voice low but steady, cutting through the room's tension like a knife. She tossed her wet coat over a chair, letting it drip onto the pristine carpet. "You've got 5 minutes to explain why you're trying to oust me from my company." The room stilled. Richard's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly, adjusting his tie. "Elena, let's be reasonable. Verdant stock is tanking. Investors are nervous about your leadership style, your personal choices." Her personal choices. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elena's jaw tightened. They weren't talking about her aggressive expansion plans or her bold pivot to sustainable tech. They were talking about the paparazzi photos from last month, her and Sophia, caught in a fleeting embrace outside a cafe, splashed across tabloids with headlines screaming, "CEO's secret romance threatens empire." The board didn't care about her vision. They cared about their image, their bottom line, and the whispers of her queerness that they couldn't control. "Personal choices?" Elena's voice was ice. "You mean my refusal to hide who I am to make you comfortable?" She stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "Verdant stock dipped because you leaked those photos to sabotage me. Don't insult my intelligence." A murmur rippled through the board. Richard's face reddened. "You're out of line, Elena. We're protecting this company's reputation." "Reputation?" She laughed, sharp and bitter. "This company is my blood, my sweat, my vision. I built it while you sat in your corner offices counting profits. And now you think you can erase me." The room grew silent again, the only sound the faint patter of rain against the windows. Elena's heart pounded, but she felt Sophia's text burning in her pocket, grounding her. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for them, for a world where they could exist without shame. "Elena," Richard said, his tone patronizing, "step outside. We'll discuss this privately." No, her word was final, a gunshot in the quiet. "You don't get to dismiss me. Not anymore." She pulled out her phone, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. One call, 1 minute, that's all it would take to turn the tables. She'd spent years preparing for this moment, building alliances, securing loyalty from those who mattered. The board thought they held the power, but they'd underestimated her. "Security," she said into the phone, her voice calm but lethal. "Escort the board out. All of them. Now." Gasps erupted around the table. Richard shot to his feet. "You can't do this." "Watch me," Elena replied, her green eyes blazing. The doors swung open and security guards filed in, their faces impassive. The board members scrambled, shouting protests, but Elena stood unmoved, a queen in her castle. She'd fire them all, every last one, and rebuild from the ashes if she had to. As the guards ushered the stunned board out into the rain, Elena's thoughts drifted to Sophia. She could almost feel her presence, her quiet strength, her belief in a future where they could love freely. This wasn't just about Verdant. It was about proving that no one could take their truth away. The next morning, the news exploded. Verdant's CEO fires entire board in dramatic showdown. Elena sat in her office, the city skyline sprawling beyond her window, and sipped her coffee unbothered. The stock market was in chaos, but she'd already anticipated that. She'd spent the night drafting a new vision for Verdant, one that embraced inclusivity, authenticity, and innovation. The world was watching and she was ready to lead. Her phone lit up with another text from Sophia. "Proud of you. Dinner tonight." Elena smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She typed back, "Only if you're cooking." But the victory was bittersweet. Firing the board was only the beginning. The real fight was ahead. Investors were pulling out, lawsuits were looming, and the media was relentless. Elena knew the road would be brutal, but with Sophia by her side, she felt invincible. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the rain-streaked window. The city was hers to conquer, and she wouldn't stop until Verdant was a beacon for those who'd been told they didn't belong. For now, though, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to dream of a quiet evening with the woman who made it all worth fighting for. Sophia Nguyen's apartment was a stark contrast to Elena's sleek penthouse. Tucked in a cozy corner of Capitol Hill, it was warm, cluttered with books and plants, and smelled faintly of jasmine and coffee. That evening, Sophia stood at her stove, stirring a pot of pho, her mother's recipe, while Elena sat at the counter, watching her with a softness she rarely showed the world. "You didn't have to fire them all," Sophia said, glancing over her shoulder with a teasing smile. "Maybe just Richard." Elena laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. "He had it coming. They all did." Sophia turned, wiping her hands on a towel, and leaned against the counter. Her navy sweater hugged her frame, and her eyes sparkled with a mix of admiration and concern. "You're incredible, you know that? But, are you okay?" Elena's smile faded slightly. She set her wineglass down, her fingers tracing the rim. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've spent so long fighting. I'm not sure what happens when the fight's over." Sophia crossed the small kitchen, her hand finding Elena's. "It's not over. It's just different now. You're not alone anymore." Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Elena felt the weight of the day lift, replaced by the warmth of Sophia's touch. She wanted to say something profound, to tell Sophia how much she meant, but words failed her. Instead, she leaned forward, their foreheads touching, and whispered, "Thank you." Dinner was a quiet affair, filled with stolen glances and soft laughter. But as they cleared the dishes, Sophia's phone buzzed with a news alert. Verdant CEO's firing spree sparks outrage. The article was vicious, accusing Elena of reckless leadership and hinting at her personal life as the cause. Sophia's face darkened as she read, but Elena just shrugged. "Let them talk," she said. "They always will." Sophia set her phone down, her jaw tight. "It's not fair. You're the best thing that's ever happened to that company. And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me," Elena replied, her voice soft but firm. She pulled Sophia close, their bodies fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. The world could rage, but in this moment they were untouchable. The weeks that followed were a storm of their own. Elena worked tirelessly to stabilize Verdant, appointing a new board diverse, progressive, and loyal. She poured her energy into a campaign to rebrand Verdant as a company that stood for something bigger than profit: equality, innovation, and truth. But the backlash was relentless. Protesters gathered outside Verdant's headquarters, some calling her a hero, others a tyrant. The media dissected her every move, and anonymous threats began to arrive, slipped under her office door or emailed from burner accounts. Sophia, meanwhile, was Elena's rock. She worked late nights at Verdant, debugging code and brainstorming with the team, but she also kept Elena grounded, reminding her to eat, to sleep, to laugh. Their relationship grew stronger, but it wasn't without strain. Sophia worried about the toll the fight was taking on Elena, and Elena feared dragging Sophia into the chaos of her world. One night, as they lay in bed, Sophia traced circles on Elena's arm. Do you ever think about walking away? She asked quietly. From all of it? Elena stared at the ceiling, the city lights casting shadows across the room. Every day, she admitted. But then I think about us, about what we could build together. A world where we don't have to hide. And I can't walk away from that. Sophia nestled closer, her breath warm against Elena's skin. Then we'll fight together. By the end of the month, Verdant's stock began to recover, buoyed by a surge of support from younger investors and the LGBTQ+ community. Elena's bold move had sparked a movement, with Stand With Elena trending across social media. But the threats didn't stop, and one evening as Elena left the office, a figure in a hoodie followed her through the rain-soaked streets. She quickened her pace, her heart racing, but when she turned, the figure was gone. She didn't tell Sophia. She didn't want to worry her. But the incident shook her, a reminder that power came with a price. Still, she pressed on, driven by a vision of a future where love like theirs wasn't a scandal but a celebration. As winter settled over Seattle, Elena and Sophia stood on the roof of Verdant's headquarters, the city sparkling below. The rain had stopped and the air was crisp, filled with possibility. Elena took Sophia's hand, her voice steady. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Sophia smiled, her eyes bright with love. Always. The weeks following the boardroom purge were a crucible for Elena Harper. Verdant Innovations was a battlefield, with every decision scrutinized, every misstep magnified. The media painted her as both a revolutionary and a dictator, and the weight of it all pressed against her chest like a vice. Yet, in the quiet moments, it was Sophia Nguyen's presence that kept her from breaking, her laughter, her touch, the way she saw Elena not as a CEO but as a woman fighting for her place in a world that wasn't ready for her. Elena's days began before dawn in her corner office, where she pored over financial reports and drafted statements to calm jittery investors. The new board, handpicked for their vision and integrity, was a breath of fresh air. But they were untested, and the company's future hung in the balance. Elena knew she'd taken a gamble firing the old guard, but it was a calculated one. Verdant wasn't just a business. It was a statement, a promise to those who'd been marginalized that they could rise and thrive. Sophia, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of energy in the tech department. At 32, she was Verdant's lead programmer, her code as elegant as her quiet confidence. She joined the company a year ago, drawn by Elena's reputation for innovation, but it was their late-night brainstorming sessions that sparked something deeper. Sophia had grown up in a conservative Vietnamese-American family, her queerness a secret she'd buried until Elena's courage inspired her to live openly. Now she poured her heart into Verdant's new projects, determined to prove that Elena's vision was worth the chaos. One morning, as Elena prepared for a press conference, Sophia slipped into her office with 2 coffees and a worried frown. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, setting a cup on Elena's desk. Elena managed a tired smile, her green eyes shadowed. "Sleep's overrated. Besides, I've got a company to save." Sophia leaned against the desk, her navy blazer slightly wrinkled from a long night of coding. "You don't have to do it alone, you know. Let me help." "You already are," Elena said, her voice softening. She reached for Sophia's hand, their fingers brushing in a moment of quiet intimacy. "You're the only thing keeping me sane." Sophia's cheeks flushed, but her eyes were serious. "Then let me do more. I've been working on a new app, something that could put Verdant back on top. It's inclusive, user-driven, and it's got your heart in it." Elena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Tell me more." Sophia pulled out her laptop, her excitement infectious. The app, called ConnectSphere, was a platform for marginalized communities to share stories, resources, and support. It was bold, personal, and perfectly aligned with Verdant's new mission. Elena listened, her exhaustion giving way to hope. This was what she'd been fighting for, a way to make a difference, not just for herself but for millions. "It's brilliant," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're brilliant." Sophia grinned, but her expression faltered as she glanced at Elena's desk, where a stack of hate mail sat unopened. "Elena, these threats. You can't keep ignoring them." Elena's jaw tightened. She'd been deflecting Sophia's concern for weeks, but the truth was the threats were escalating. Letters filled with slurs, emails promising violence, even a brick thrown through her car window last week. She'd kept it from Sophia, not wanting to burden her, but the weight was becoming unbearable. "I can handle it," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. Sophia crossed her arms, her brown eyes fierce. "You don't have to. We're a team, remember?" Before Elena could respond, her assistant burst in, pale-faced. "Miss Harper, you need to see this." She handed Elena a tablet, where a live news feed showed protesters outside Verdant's headquarters. Some held signs reading "Support Elena," but others, louder and angrier, waved banners screaming "No woke so's," and worse. Elena's stomach churned. She'd expected pushback, but this was personal, vicious. She glanced at Sophia, who looked ready to storm outside and confront the mob herself. "Don't," Elena said, grabbing her arm. "They want a reaction. Let's give them something better." The press conference that afternoon was a gamble. Elena stood at the podium, rain streaking the windows behind her, and faced a sea of cameras and skeptical faces. She wore her signature black suit, her dark hair pulled back, every inch the unflinching CEO. But inside, she was terrified not of the crowd, but of failing the people who believed in her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. "Verdant Innovations is more than a company. It's a promisito innovate to include to inspire. I fired the board not out of spite, but because they lost sight of that promise. Today I'm doubling down. We're launching ConnectSphere, a platform for those who've been silenced to find their voice." The room erupted in questions, some supportive, others hostile. Elena answered with precision, her passion cutting through the noise. By the end, even the skeptics were listening. The stock ticked up slightly, and ConnectSphere began trending. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. That night, Elena and Sophia celebrated quietly in Sophia's apartment, sharing takeout and a bottle of wine. The TV played in the background, muted as news anchors debated Elena's speech. Sophia nestled against Elena on the couch, her head resting on her shoulder. "You were incredible today," she murmured. Elena kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of jasmine. "We were incredible." But the peace was short-lived. At midnight, Elena's phone rang, a private number. She answered, her heart sinking as a distorted voice hissed, "You think you're untouchable, Harper? Watch your back." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, her hands trembling. Sophia, half asleep, stirred. "Who was that?" "No one," Elena lied, forcing a smile. "Just work." She didn't sleep that night. The threats were no longer just words. They were a shadow following her, growing darker by the day. She thought of the figure in the hoodie, the brick through her window, and wondered how much longer she could keep Sophia safe from the storm she'd unleashed. The next morning, Elena doubled security at Verdant and hired a private investigator to trace the threats. She didn't tell Sophia, knowing it would only worry her more. Instead, she threw herself into ConnectSphere, working alongside Sophia and the tech team to refine the app. The project was a lifeline, a reminder of why she was fighting. Every line of code, every design choice, was a step toward a world where people like them could thrive. But the pressure was relentless. Investors demanded meetings, the media hounded her, and the threats kept coming. One afternoon, as Elena left a meeting, she found a note slipped under her office door. "You'll regret this, Dyke." The word hit like a slap, but she crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, refusing to let it break her. Sophia, however, wasn't so easily fooled. She noticed the tension in Elena's shoulders, the way her smiles didn't reach her eyes. One evening, as they walked through Pike Place Market, Sophia stopped her by the waterfront, the Puget Sound glittering under the setting sun. "Talk to me," Sophia said, her voice firm but gentle. "You're carrying something and it's killing you." Elena hesitated, the words caught in her throat. She wanted to protect Sophia, to shield her from the ugliness, but the truth was too heavy to hold alone. "The threats? They're getting worse," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to stop them." Sophia's face hardened, but her touch was soft as she cupped Elena's cheek. "You don't have to stop them alone. We're in this together, remember?" Elena nodded, tears stinging her eyes. For the first time, she let herself lean into Sophia's strength, let herself be vulnerable. They stood there, wrapped in each other, as the world moved around them. The threats, the protests, the chouse, it all faded, leaving only the two of them unbreakable. Winter tightened its grip on Seattle, and with it, the stakes grew higher for Elena Harper and Verdant Innovations. ConnectSphere was gaining traction, with beta testers raving about its potential, but the backlash against Elena was unrelenting. The threats had evolved from letters and calls to something more sinister: hacked emails, doctored photos, and whispers of a smear campaign orchestrated by someone with deep pockets and deeper grudges. Elena suspected Richard Vance, the ousted board chairman, but her private investigator had yet to find proof. 38, Elena was used to fighting, but this was different. The attacks weren't just about her leadership. They were about her identity, her love for Sophia Nguyen, and everything she stood for. Every morning, she woke to a new headline or anonymous message, each one chipping away at her resolve. But Sophia, her anchor, refused to let her falter. Sophia's days were a blur of coding and strategy sessions, her 32-year-old mind sharp and relentless. She'd poured her soul into ConnectSphere, seeing it as more than an app. It was a lifeline for people like her, who'd spent years hiding who they were. But she wasn't blind to the toll it was taking on Elena. She saw the late nights, the skipped meals, the way Elena's hands shook when she thought no one was watching. One evening, as they worked late in Verdant's tech lab, Sophia caught Elena staring blankly at her computer screen. The office was quiet, the city lights shimmering through the windows. Sophia set her laptop aside and crossed the room, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. "You're not okay," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And don't lie to me, Elena." Elena sighed, running a hand through her dark hair. Her green eyes were tired, but they softened at Sophia's concern. "I'm trying to be," she said. "But it's like they're coming for everything: Verdant, me, us." Sophia knelt beside her, taking her hands. "Let them try. They can't touch what we have." Elena managed a small smile, but it didn't hide the fear in her eyes. "I don't want you caught in the crossfire, Soph. If something happened to you." "Nothing's going to happen," Sophia said, her voice fierce. "We're stronger than they are. Together." The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Elena's assistant, Mia, entered, her face pale. "Miss Harper, you need to see this." She handed over a tablet showing a leaked email, one of Elena's private messages to Sophia, filled with tender words and promises of a future together. The subject line had been twisted into a tabloid headline: "CEO's love letters expose weak leadership." Elena's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a violation. It was a declaration of war. Someone had hacked her personal account, and the timing right before ConnectSphere's official launch felt deliberate. She glanced at Sophia, whose face was a mask of fury. "Who did this?" Sophia demanded, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Elena said, her mind racing. "But I'm going to find out." She called her investigator, barking orders to trace the hack. Meanwhile, Sophia dove into Verdant's servers, searching for vulnerabilities. Hours later, she found a backdoor in the system, a sloppy but effective piece of malware. "This wasn't an amateur," Sophia said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Someone paid for this." Elena's suspicion of Richard Vance grew stronger, but without evidence, she couldn't act. Instead, she focused on damage control. She issued a public statement, owning the leaked emails with unapologetic pride. "My love for Sophia Nguyen is not a weakness," she wrote. "It's my strength. Verdant stands for truth, and I won't hide mine." The statement went viral, splitting public opinion. Supporters rallied behind her, sharing stories of their own struggles on ConnectSphere's beta platform. But the haters were louder, flooding social media with vitriol. Elena tried to shield Sophia from the worst of it, but Sophia refused to be coddled. "I'm not fragile," Sophia said one night, as they sat in Elena's penthouse, the city sprawling below. "I signed up for this when I fell for you." Elena pulled her close, her heart aching. "I just want you safe." "I am," Sophia whispered, her lips brushing Elena's. "As long as I'm with you." The launch of ConnectSphere was a make-or-break moment. Elena and Sophia worked around the clock, refining the app and preparing for the unveiling at a tech conference in San Francisco. The event was a glittering affair, packed with industry giants and media vultures. Elena took the stage, her black dress sharp and commanding, but her hands trembled as she gripped the podium. Sophia watched from the wings, her presence a quiet reassurance. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice carrying across the auditorium, ConnectSphere is more than an app. It's a movement. A place where every voice matters, where no one has to hide who they are to be heard. The crowd erupted in applause, but Elena's eyes were on Sophia, who gave her a nod of encouragement. The demo went flawlessly, showcasing ConnectSphere's sleek interface and powerful features. By the end, investors were buzzing, and the app shot to the top of tech news. But the triumph was short-lived. As Elena stepped off the stage, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your moment. It won't last." Attached was a photo of her and Sophia, taken that morning in their hotel room, through a window they hadn't known was being watched. Elena's heart stopped. She showed the text to Sophia, whose face paled but didn't waver. "We need to end this," Sophia said. "Now." They hired a cybersecurity firm to bolster Verdant's defenses, and a second investigator to track the stalker. Meanwhile, Elena doubled down on ConnectSphere, pouring resources into making it a success. The app's user base grew, with stories pouring in from queer teens, immigrants, and others who'd found a community in its digital walls. Each message was a reminder of why they couldn't give up. But the threats didn't stop. One night, as Elena and Sophia left the conference hotel, a car swerved too close, its headlights blinding. Elena pulled Sophia out of the way, her heart pounding. The car sped off, but the message was clear. Someone wanted them scared. Back in Seattle, Elena confided in her new board, who urged her to go public with the threats. "It'll rally support," one member said. "Show the world what you're up against." Elena hesitated. Going public meant exposing Sophia to more scrutiny, more danger. But Sophia was adamant. "If we hide, they win," she said. "Let's fight in the open." So they did. Elena held another press conference, this time flanked by Sophia. She laid bare the threats, the stalking, the hate, her voice steady but raw. "I won't be silenced," she said. "Not by fear, not by hate. Verdant is my home, and I'm fighting for it for all of us." The response was overwhelming. Support poured in from employees to strangers, and ConnectSphere's downloads skyrocketed. But so did the threats. Elena knew they were close to finding the source. Her investigators had traced the malware to a shell company linked to Richard Vance, but they needed more time. As they left the press conference hand in hand, Elena felt a flicker of hope. The fight was far from over, but with Sophia by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. The breakthrough came on a cold December morning, when Elena's private investigator called with news. Richard Vance had been linked to the shell company behind the malware and the stalking. Bank records showed payments to a private security firm known for dirty tactics, and a disgruntled employee had turned whistleblower, providing emails that tied Vance to the smear campaign. It wasn't enough for an arrest yet, but it was enough for Elena to act. She sat in her office, the evidence spread across her desk, her heart a mix of fury and relief. At 38, Elena Harper had faced countless battles, but this one felt personal in a way that cut deeper than any boardroom betrayal. Vance hadn't just attacked her company. He'd targeted her love, her identity, everything that made her human. She wanted justice, but more than that, she wanted peace for herself, for Sophia and Gwen, for the future they were building. Sophia, now 32 and fiercer than ever, was in the tech lab when Elena called her in. She walked through the door, her navy sweater slightly rumpled, her brown eyes bright with determination. "You got him, didn't you?" she said, reading Elena's expression. "Not yet," Elena said, handing her the file. "But we're close. Vance is behind it all, the hack, the threats, the stalking. I'm going to confront him." Sophia's face hardened. "Not alone, you're not." Elena hesitated. She'd spent so long protecting Sophia, shielding her from the worst of the storm, but she knew Sophia was right. They were a team, and this fight belonged to both of them. "Okay," she said, her voice soft. "Together." They devised a plan. Elena would meet Vance at a neutral location, a public cafe in downtown Seattle, with her investigator and a lawyer nearby. Sophia insisted on coming, not as a bystander but as a partner. "He needs to see us," she said. "Both of us. Let him know we're not scared." The cafe was crowded, the air thick with the scent of coffee and rain. Elena and Sophia sat at a corner table, their hands clasped under the table, a quiet act of defiance. Vance arrived, his tailored suit and smug grin unchanged, But there was a flicker of unease in his eyes as he saw Sophia beside Elena. "Richard," Elena said, her voice cold but controlled. "Sit." He smirked, pulling out a chair. "This is dramatic even for you, Elena. What's this about?" "You know exactly what it's about," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "The malware, the threats, the stalking. We've got your name on payments, emails, everything. It's over." Vance's smirk faltered, but he leaned back, feigning confidence. "You've got nothing. Just a desperate attempt to save your failing company." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "You targeted us because of who we are. Because we dared to love each other. But you underestimated us, Richard. You're done." For a moment, Vance's composure cracked. He glanced around as if expecting backup, but the cafe was filled with ordinary people, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Elena's investigator sat 2 tables away, recording every word. "This isn't over," Vance hissed, standing. "You'll regret this." "No," Elena said, her voice steady. "You will." He left, his footsteps heavy, and Elena exhaled, her hands trembling. Sophia squeezed her hand, her touch grounding. "We did it," she whispered. "Not yet," Elena said. "But we're close." The evidence was enough to go public. Elena's lawyer filed a lawsuit against Vance, and the story broke the next day. Former Verdant chairman linked to smear campaign against CEO. The backlash was swift. Investors who'd wavered now rallied behind Elena, and ConnectSphere's user base doubled. The app was a phenomenon, a testament to what Verdant could be under Elena's leadership. But the victory came at a cost. The threats didn't stop, and Elena's security team reported sightings of suspicious figures near her penthouse. She and Sophia moved to a safe house, a small cabin outside Seattle, where they could breathe, if only for a moment. The cabin was simple, with a crackling fireplace and a view of the snowy forest, and for the first time in months, they felt like themselves. One night, as they sat by the fire, Sophia traced Elena's palm with her finger. "Do you ever think about what comes after this?" she asked. "When the fight's over?" Elena stared into the flames, her heart full. "I think about us. A house maybe. Somewhere quiet. Just you and me." Sophia smiled, her eyes soft. "I like that." They made love that night, slow and tender, the world outside forgotten. For those hours there were no threats, no lawsuits, no headlines, just the two of them. Their love a shield against the chaos. But the chaos wasn't done with them. The next morning, Elena's investigator called with urgent news. Vance had fled the country, likely to avoid charges. The police were closing in, but he was slippery, and Elena knew he wouldn't go down without a fight. She felt a pang of fear, not for herself but for Sophia. "We need to end this," Elena said, her voice resolute. "For good." Sophia nodded, her jaw set. "Then let's do it." They returned to Seattle, determined to see the fight through. Elena worked with her team to strengthen Verdant's defenses, while Sophia dove deeper into the app, adding features to protect users from harassment. ConnectSphere was more than a success. It was a movement, a beacon for those who'd been silenced. Every download, every story shared, was a victory against the hate that had tried to break them. As Christmas approached, Elena and Sophia stood together at Verdant's holiday gala, a glittering event that doubled as ConnectSphere's official launch party. Elena wore a deep green gown, her presence commanding, while Sophia shone in a simple black dress, her warmth lighting up the room. They moved through the crowd, hand in hand, unapologetic and unafraid. The gala was a triumph, with speeches and toasts celebrating Verdant's resilience. But as Elena took the stage, her eyes caught a familiar face in the crowd, Vance's former assistant, a woman who'd been fired alongside him. She was watching, her expression unreadable, and Elena's instincts screamed danger. She leaned toward Sophia, whispering, "We need to go. Now." They slipped out a side door, security close behind, just as a commotion erupted inside. Later, they learned the assistant had been carrying a hidden camera, likely feeding footage to Vance or his allies. The close call shook Elena, but it also steeled her resolve. She wouldn't let fear win. The new year brought a fragile calm to Elena Harper's world, but she knew better than to trust it. Richard Vance was still at large, and though the lawsuit against him was gaining traction, his absence left a void filled with uncertainty. Verdant Innovations was thriving, with ConnectSphere now a global phenomenon, But Elena and Sophia and Gwyn remained on edge, their lives a delicate balance between love and vigilance. Elena, at 38, had never felt more powerful or more vulnerable. Her love for Sophia, now 32, was the heartbeat of her fight, but it also made her a target. The threats had slowed, but they hadn't stopped, and every day brought the fear that Vance would strike again. Still, Elena refused to hide. She and Sophia lived openly, their relationship a quiet rebellion against a world that wanted to tear them down. One morning, as they sat in Elena's penthouse, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise over Seattle, Sophia broke the silence. "We can't keep living like this," she said, her brown eyes searching Elena's, "always looking over our shoulders." Elena set her mug down, her heart heavy. "I know. But until Vance is caught, we don't have a choice." Sophia reached for her hand, her touch steady. "Then let's find him. Let's end this." Elena nodded, a plan forming. Her investigator had traced Vance to a small town in Mexico, where he was hiding under an alias. The police were closing in, but Elena wanted to confront him herself, not for revenge, but for closure. She needed to look him in the eye and show him that she'd won. They flew to Mexico under tight security, staying in a discreet hotel near the coast. The town was quiet, with cobblestone streets and colorful markets, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind. Elena's investigator arranged a meeting with a local contact who'd seen Vance, and that evening, they sat in a dimly lit cantina, waiting. Vance walked in, older and gaunter than Elena remembered, his arrogance replaced by a hunted look. He froze when he saw her, his eyes darting to Sophia, then back. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," he said, his voice low. Elena stood, her presence commanding even in the small room. "You tried to destroy me, Richard. My company, my life, my love. But you failed." Vance sneered, but it was weak, hollow. "You think you've won? The world will never accept people like you." Sophia stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. "The world is changing, Richard. And you're on the wrong side of it." Before Vance could respond, the local police entered, cuffs in hand. The evidence bank, records, emails, witness statements was airtight. Vance was arrested, his empire of hate crumbling as he was led away. Elena and Sophia stood outside the cantina, the warm night air wrapping around them. For the first time in months, Elena felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She pulled Sophia close, their lips meeting in a kiss that held all the promises they'd made to each other. Back in Seattle, Verdant soared. ConnectSphere was a global success, its user base a vibrant tapestry of voices from every corner of the world. Elena and Sophia became icons, not just for the queer community but for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. They spoke at conferences, shared their story, and inspired millions. But the true victory was quieter, more personal. On a rainy spring evening, Elena proposed to Sophia on the roof of Verdant's headquarters, where their journey had begun. The city sparkled below, and Sophia said yes, tears mixing with the rain on her face. They married in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family, their love a beacon in a world still learning to embrace it. Years later, as Elena looked back, she realized the fight had been worth it, not just for Verdant, but for the life she and Sophia had built. They'd faced hate, fear, and betrayal, but they'd come through stronger, their love a testament to what was possible when you refused to back down. As they stood hand in hand, watching the sunset from their new home, a quiet house in the countryside, just as Elena had dreamed, Sophia whispered, "We did it." Elena smiled, her heart full. "Yeah, we did." Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.